Peace can be found in the smallest moments of your day. Stay with me to discover simple rituals that will transform your life. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more Buddhist knowledge.
Have you ever woken up in the morning and felt lost? Not lost in the way you might have felt decades ago when you were rushing to work or tending to young children, but lost in a deeper way, wondering what your days are meant to hold now. Do you sometimes find yourself staring out the window, watching the world move by, and asking yourself, what is my purpose now that the busy chapters of my life have ended? If you've ever felt this gentle ache in your heart, this quiet questioning of where you fit in the grand tapestry of life, now that retirement has arrived, then I want you to know something profound. You are not alone, and more importantly, you are not lost. You are exactly where you need to be, at exactly the right moment, to discover something beautiful that has been waiting patiently for you all along. Today, I want to share with you a story. It's the story of how simple daily rituals, rooted in Buddhist wisdom, can transform your retirement years into the most peaceful, meaningful period of your entire life. Not through complicated meditation practices that require you to sit in uncomfortable positions, not through lengthy spiritual texts that overwhelm the mind, but through gentle, accessible practices that can be woven into your day as naturally as breathing. There was once a wise teacher who lived in a small mountain village. Let's call him Master Chun. He was 83 years old, his hair white as fresh snow, his hands weathered by decades of simple living. Every day, people would climb the winding path to his humble home, seeking answers to their deepest questions about aging, purpose, and finding peace in their later years. And Master Chun would always greet them with the same gentle smile and ask the same question. Tell me, my friend, what did you do with your morning? Most visitors expected to discuss profound philosophical matters, the meaning of life, the nature of suffering. But Master Chun always started with something so simple, it seemed almost trivial. Yet this question, what did you do with your morning, held within it the secret that transformed the lives of everyone who truly listened. One autumn day, a woman named Margaret made the long journey to see Master Chun. Margaret was 71 years old, recently widowed, her children grown and living in distant cities. She felt invisible, purposeless, as if her life had somehow slipped away while she wasn't paying attention. Master Chun, she said, I don't know what to do with myself. I raised children, I had a career, I was a good wife. Now my husband is gone, my children are busy with their own lives, and I feel like I'm just existing. Waiting. But waiting for what? How do I find meaning when it feels like my meaningful years are behind me? Master Chun poured tea with movements so deliberate and graceful that Margaret found herself mesmerized by the simple act. Margaret, he said softly, tell me about yesterday morning. From the moment you opened your eyes until the sun was fully in the sky. Margaret shifted uncomfortably. Well, I woke up around 6:30. I lay in bed for maybe 20 minutes, worrying about things. Then I got up, made coffee, checked the news on my tablet. I felt anxious about the state of the world. Then I just started another day that felt like all the others. Master Chun nodded with deep understanding. And how did that morning feel in your body? In your heart? Heavy, Margaret answered. It felt heavy and urgent and empty at the same time. Ah, Master Chun smiled. Now you've told me something profound. You've described the morning of someone who is trying to live in tomorrow while remaining haunted by yesterday, which means you're never actually present for today. But what if I told you that the secret to transforming your entire life lies not in grand changes, but in transforming those first precious hours of each day? Margaret leaned forward. Something in his voice made her believe that he held an answer she desperately needed. In Buddhist teaching, Master Chun continued, we have a saying, How you begin is how you live. The quality of your morning creates the energy that flows through your entire day. Let me tell you about Mrs. Lin. Mrs. Lin was 87 when I first met her, living alone, having lost her husband. Like you, she came to me feeling that her life had lost its meaning. But Mrs. Lin discovered something that changed everything. She discovered the power of beginning each day as if it were a sacred ceremony. Master Chun settled back in his chair. Mrs. Lin began what we call the 5 sacred moments, 5 simple rituals that could be completed in less than an hour each morning, but which created ripples of peace and purpose that lasted throughout her day. The first sacred moment was the gratitude awakening. Instead of immediately reaching for her phone or turning on the news, Mrs. Lin trained herself to remain still for just 5 minutes upon waking. She would place her hand over her heart and acknowledge 3 things. First, that she had been given the gift of another day. Second, that her body had carried her safely through the night. And third, that whatever this day might bring, she had the capacity to meet it with grace. Margaret found herself unconsciously placing her own hand over her heart as Master Chun spoke. The second sacred moment was the mindful rising. Instead of jumping out of bed with her mind already racing, Mrs. Lin learned to rise with deliberate attention. She would sit at the edge of her bed for a moment, feeling her feet make contact with the floor, standing slowly and walking to her window with present awareness rather than rushing toward her to-do list. The third was the water blessing. When she prepared her morning beverage, she transformed this routine act into a ceremony of appreciation. Instead of mechanically going through the motions, she would hold the cup in her hands, feeling its weight and warmth, watching the steam rise. More importantly, she would use this time to send loving thoughts to people in her life, her children, neighbors, even strangers who might be starting their day with their own cup of tea or coffee. Margaret felt tears gathering in her eyes, though she couldn't say exactly why. The fourth was the purpose setting. Mrs. Lin would sit quietly for 5 minutes and ask herself, how can I be a blessing in the world today? Not, what do I need to accomplish? But how can my presence contribute something positive today? Some days, her answer was as simple as, I will smile at the postal worker, or I will call my neighbor. But by asking this question each morning, she never started a day without purpose. And the 5th sacred moment was the quiet sitting. Mrs. Lin would sit in her favorite chair for 10 minutes, not meditating in any complicated way, simply sitting quietly, breathing naturally, allowing herself to be present to whatever she was feeling in that moment. Sometimes peaceful, sometimes sad. She learned that the goal wasn't to feel any particular way, but simply to be with herself with acceptance and kindness. Master Chun looked directly at Margaret. Do you know what happened to Mrs. Lin after practicing these 5 sacred moments for just 30 days? She discovered something she had never known before. She actually enjoyed her own company. For the first time in her adult life, being alone didn't feel like a punishment. It felt like a precious opportunity to nurture the relationship that would be with her for the rest of her life, the relationship with herself. But that wasn't all. When she began her days with this sense of peace and purpose, other people were naturally drawn to her. She made new friends, deepened existing relationships, and found herself becoming a source of comfort for others struggling with the same feelings she had once experienced. Margaret sat in silence, absorbing not just Master Chun's words, but the quality of peace that seemed to emanate from him. These 5 sacred moments, they seem so simple. Yes, Margaret, that's exactly right. They are simple, and that's precisely why they work. We've been taught to believe that profound change requires dramatic action, but Buddhist wisdom teaches us something different, that the most powerful transformations come through consistent attention to small, seemingly ordinary moments. He stood and walked to the window. Think about water, Margaret. A single drop seems insignificant, but millions of drops, flowing consistently, can carve the Grand Canyon. These 5 sacred moments are like drops of peace. One morning's practice might feel small, but practiced consistently, they can reshape the landscape of your entire life. But Master Chun, Margaret said, what about the rest of the day? What about those long hours that sometimes feel so empty? Master Chun smiled knowingly. Mrs. Lin discovered that when her mornings were rooted in these sacred moments, her days began to organize themselves around the same principles. She developed what we call afternoon anchors, simple practices that maintained her sense of peace throughout the day. The first anchor was the breathing stone. Mrs. Lin carried a small, smooth stone with her. Whenever she noticed herself becoming anxious or lost in worried thoughts, she would take out her stone and hold it while taking 5 slow breaths. This simple act brought her back to the present moment, the only place where peace is actually available. The second anchor was the gratitude hunt. Instead of going through her afternoon mechanically, Mrs. Lin learned to actively look for things to appreciate. At the grocery store, she would notice the abundance of choices, the friendliness of employees, the miracle of having resources to buy what she needed. This trained her mind to notice the good that was actually present alongside any challenges. The third anchor was the compassion practice. Like many in her generation, Mrs. Lin had learned to be quite critical of herself. She developed what she called compassion phrases, simple statements she would repeat when self-critical thoughts arose. Instead of, "I should be handling this better," she would say, "This is difficult. May I be kind to myself right now?" Master Chun's voice grew warm. The fourth anchor was the service-seeking. Mrs. Lin began to see her daily activities as opportunities to bless others. She would really listen when cashiers mentioned problems, call neighbors who lived alone, share vegetables from her garden. She discovered that her greatest gifts weren't things she could do, but the presence and kindness she could offer. And the fifth anchor was the letting go practice. Each afternoon, Mrs. Lin would consciously release one thing she couldn't control while opening to what was still possible. I release my expectation that my body feel like it did 20 years ago, and I open to appreciating what it can still do and the wisdom that comes with experience. Margaret leaned forward. Did these practices really transform her experience? Mrs. Lin lived to be 94. In her final 7 years, she told me they were actually the happiest of her entire life. Not because her circumstances were perfect, but because she had learned how to begin each day as a sacred gift rather than a burden to be endured. But Master Chun, Margaret said quietly, what about the deeper concerns, mortality, the fear of becoming a burden, questions about what happens after death? Master Chun's expression grew deeply compassionate. Mrs. Lin developed what we call the evening practice to address exactly these concerns. Each night, she would practice gratitude for the temporary, consciously appreciating her body's faithful service that day, acknowledging that nothing lasts forever, which made everything more precious rather than more frightening. She would end each day with a loving release, sending love to everyone in her life, including those who had died. She would lie in bed and silently say, "May you be happy. May you be peaceful. May you know how loved you are." This connected her to a web of love that extended far beyond her immediate circumstances. Finally, she practiced the mystery embrace, finding comfort in not knowing rather than anxiety and uncertainty. Instead of demanding certainty about what happens after death, she learned to appreciate the wonder and awe of being part of something larger than individual understanding. Margaret felt something shifting inside her. Master Chun, I feel like you've given me a roadmap, but I have to ask, what if I'm too old to change? I'm 71. Haven't I missed my chance? Master Chun's eyes lit up with joy. Oh, Margaret, you've just asked the most important question of all. Do you know what Mrs. Lin told me on her 90th birthday? She said, if I had learned this at 40 or 50, I might have been too busy to really appreciate it. Learning it at 87 meant I could give it my full attention and enjoy every moment of the transformation. He looked directly at her. Margaret, there's something about this stage of life that actually makes it perfect for spiritual growth. You have something now you've never had before, time. Not just hours, but time in a deeper sense. Time to be present, to savor, to reflect. Your retirement isn't the end of your meaningful life. It's the beginning of your most conscious life. Think about it. When you were raising children and building a career, could you have spent mindful minutes appreciating your morning coffee? Could you have paused throughout the day for sacred moments of presence? You were doing exactly what that stage required. But now, you have the luxury of depth over speed, being over doing. Margaret felt a lightness she hadn't experienced in years. So feeling purposeless in retirement is actually an invitation to discover a different kind of purpose. Exactly. The purpose of your earlier years was largely external, raising children, contributing through work. The purpose of these years is largely internal, developing wisdom, cultivating peace, becoming a person whose very presence is a gift to the world. Margaret, let me be completely honest about what these practices will and won't do. They will not prevent difficulties from arising. They will not cure illness or solve financial problems or stop aging. What they will do is give you inner resources to meet whatever challenges arise with grace rather than despair. I've seen people use these practices while facing terminal illness, severe health problems, and profound loss. The practices don't eliminate suffering, but they provide tools for carrying it with dignity. They help us distinguish between pain, which is often unavoidable, and suffering, which comes from our resistance to pain. Master Chun walked to the window where stars were beginning to appear. Margaret, I want to leave you with the most important teaching of all. Start small. Begin with just one practice, perhaps the morning gratitude awakening. Practice it consistently for 2 weeks. Don't worry about perfection. When you forget, simply begin again with kindness. These practices are not about becoming a different person. They are about becoming more fully yourself, the wise, loving, peaceful person who has always existed within you, but may have been obscured by years of busyness and worry. As their conversation drew to a close, Margaret felt something she hadn't experienced in years: eagerness for tomorrow. Not because tomorrow would bring anything dramatically different, but because she now had tools for meeting whatever it brought with presence, gratitude, and grace. Thank you, Margaret said, meaning it more deeply than she had meant anything in months. This conversation has given me something I thought I had lost forever. What's that? Master Chun asked gently. Hope. Not hope that my circumstances will change dramatically, but hope that I can find peace and meaning in the life I actually have. That hope is well placed, Margaret. You are not too old, not too set in your ways, not too late. You are exactly the right age to begin the most conscious and peaceful chapter of your life. As Margaret prepared to leave, she thought about which practice she would begin with. The morning gratitude awakening called to her, the simple act of placing her hand on her heart upon waking and acknowledging that she had been given another day. Such a small thing, but as Master Chun had taught her, the most profound transformations often come through the smallest acts of love we offer ourselves. For the first time since her husband's death, Margaret felt genuinely excited about waking up in the morning. Not because morning would be dramatically different, but because she would approach it differently, with presence, appreciation, and gentle compassion for herself. She understood now that aging gracefully wasn't about avoiding difficulties or maintaining youthful abilities. Grace was about meeting each stage of life with acceptance and wisdom. Grace was about finding ways to be a blessing regardless of circumstances. Grace was about discovering that peace doesn't depend on external conditions, but can be cultivated through simple, daily choices to live with awareness and love. Margaret drove home through the quiet night, carrying not just new practices to try, but a new understanding of what retirement could become. She had learned that this stage of life wasn't about waiting for meaning to find her. It was about creating meaning through the quality of attention she brought to each moment. As she pulled into her driveway, Margaret whispered the words she would begin with tomorrow. I have been given the gift of another day. My body has carried me safely through the night. I have the capacity to meet whatever comes with grace. The words felt like a promise. Not that everything would be easy, but that she wouldn't face anything alone, because she was learning to be her own most compassionate companion. Tomorrow would be the first day of the rest of her life, and for the first time in years, that felt like a gift rather than a burden. Margaret had discovered the secret Master Chun had been teaching all along, that a peaceful life doesn't come from perfect circumstances, but from the simple, sacred choice to meet each ordinary moment with extraordinary presence. The path to peace had been there all along, waiting patiently for her to discover it, not in changing her life, but in changing how fully she lived it.